When was the last time you gave yourself permission to slow down and rest without guilt? Welcome to Normalize the Conversation. I'm your host, Francesca Reicheter, and today I'm joined by licensed marriage and family therapist, assistant professor, author, speaker, and CEO and founder of George Talks LLC, Dr. George James. In this episode, Dr. James shares his experience of managing high stress while balancing multiple roles to offer valuable insights into why it's important to set boundaries and take breaks. Remember, productivity does not have to mean overwhelming yourself with stress and responsibilities. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am super excited for our conversation. But before we begin, I just want to check in. How are you really?
I'm actually feeling really great today. I think today, coming off of a holiday weekend with some celebration, some good family time. I even got a chance to play basketball, which I haven't been able to do in a little bit. So I'm actually feeling pretty good today.
Oh, I love that. It's so great when you have that time to just reset and take care of yourself and do something that makes you feel really good.
It is. And, I think like in the work of being there for other people and supporting other people and being a therapist, coach, guide, sometimes it can be hard to make that time even as much as we want to encourage others to do that. And so I love when I'm able to really do that. And I get my tank gets filled back up with just quality time with the people I love, friends, family. And I was able to have that this past weekend.
It's amazing. One of my teachers actually makes us do a self-care journal every week.
Nice.
And I thought it was really silly in the beginning, but as we kept doing it every week, I was like, what did I actually do to care for myself?
Hmm.
And how difficult it is to make time now as a student and getting into going into practicum and then becoming a trainee and associate. What is that going to look like? And where am I going to be able to make time if I'm not even consciously making time for myself now?
Yeah, it's one of those things like everything. It's something that you build and grow. But for me, it's been like different phases of my life that make it either easier or harder. And if you don't have it in place, if you're not practicing, if you're not having some routines, it can be easily gone. And, for myself, what I learned was that I needed a break, and that could be a day off, a half day off, a weekend, a getaway, a vacation, probably every, 5 or 6 weeks. I kind of realized that was a rhythm that helped me to feel good. And when the pandemic hit, especially the shutdown, I went months without having a break and I just felt it. It felt like I remember one day just feeling exhausted and it was because there was such a shift in what we were doing and what was expected and people were in need and I was being asked to do lots of different things but I had to find time. And I remember finding talking to my wife like, hey, we gotta find a way how to like take a day off. And it took us a few weeks to find a date that worked on both of our schedules. But I still remember that October 30th of that year, we took that day off and it was great. And all we did was drive down 2 hours to Baltimore and hang out for the day, walk around because this was a time when you weren't really doing anything. And we just got back in the car and drove back, but it felt great because I had time off and it was part of my self-care.
And it's really great that you had someone to do that with and to be able to coordinate your schedules. It is so hard to coordinate a schedule with anyone. I'm learning that now.
Yes.
So hard. I spent like 6 months before my friends and I could align our schedules. It's actually really difficult. But the fact that during the pandemic, everything was shifting with telehealth, right? Being able to serve more clients a lot quicker it was a lot. And there was a huge increase in the demand of therapists. So to go from that massive shift where so many people are struggling for the first time, they're dealing with like a severe isolation from their friends, from their family, and for the first time, kind of being stuck with your own thoughts and stuck home. and then stuck home with your family and maybe your partner who you're not used to being with all the time. It was a lot, and it was a lot on therapists to be able to offer that support for their clients while also going through very similar situations.
Yes. Yes. All of that was happening, and just saw, I see it today even more so, like, in the moment, people kind of rise to the occasion and they do what they have to, but it's not until you start to get to the end of the moment or post that moment where you realize the impact. And I've seen colleagues and friends who are just saying they don't want to do it anymore, or they're worn out, or they might not have had that self care practice. And for me, I think what has helped me is that I've always had like a diverse way of how I do my work. That it wasn't all therapy every day for all the days, and I think that if it was that, I probably would have felt burnt out, or if I didn't have those days where I was taking a break or a vacation or just doing something else. I mean, like, just like coming off a weekend, like I said, having good times. I had a late start today, so my wife and I went to Top Golf and had good times, just hanging out before the start of my day because I had a later start, and just trying to embed those things that I think would allow me to separate, what throughout the pandemic I created, my office in my home, my virtual office. And I realized I actually feel good when I leave the office and I don't come back for a few days. Right. Like it really feels like I left the office for the weekend and I come back Monday or whenever I come back, and that separation has felt good. And I think some people haven't been able to have that separation or restoration or break or even diversity in what they do, and I think that all plays a role.
Absolutely, that work-life balance or integration, being able to find what works for you is very difficult, and a lot of people just don't know where to start.
Yeah, 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 people struggle with it. And you know I also appreciate the people when I was just thinking about the past few years, the people who also want what's best for me. So I say that because I got to the place of taking golf lessons over the past 4 years. And it happened because someone else kind of was like, hey, we should probably go golfing. And we were just having a conversation. And I was like, I wouldn't consider myself a golfer. And then he was like, well, let's take a lesson. And it was that kind of accountability and support. And he even went the extra mile. He's like, you know what? I'll pay for the lesson. Let's just meet up. And what I valued about it, one, his willingness and generosity, but then it was something about being outside and just taking in the fresh air and really forcing me to take a break out of my schedule. I had to put it in my schedule. I had to have enough time to travel to meet, do the lesson, be there for a while, and then come back. And that break really was important. And so sometimes it's the people who care about us and see us, especially as providers, as givers, as therapists, as coaches, as healers, whatever role you might be, that sometimes the people around us might see that we need to break. And sometimes we have to listen to them too.
Yes, it's so amazing that you had your friend kind of put you into that time for yourself. I know with my friends, something I started doing was like put it on my calendar. You call me, let's open my calendar and let's put it on the calendar and block off that time. So I can't turn around later and say, oh, well, I scheduled something because
Yeah.
that's really easy for me to do to sit there and say, well, this takes priority over going and having fun and learning that it's okay to do both and make time to have that bit of a life where so you took up golf, I took up tennis, so where maybe we go play tennis or go for a walk, or this weekend we made brunch together. Just doing something small, but purposely blocking off that time so I can't, because it is hard when you wanna work really hard and do everything that makes you feel really happy and excited, but also know that you can feel happy and excited caring for yourself too.
I think that's so important. I love that you're scheduling right away with your friends and putting it as a high priority. And yeah, there. I think like in being a therapist or in this type of work, and there's many fields and careers where it's very similar, where you're for the most part doing something good for other people, or you're trying to be there, and there can be a demand, or whether you're in school or whether you're in once again another profession, it can start to build where it feels like I have to be there, or I have to do this, or I am needed, or this is an important situation, or important client, or important case. And and then you just keep doing that. And before you realize it, everything is important. Every minute is taken, except for the time that you might need to spend with yourself or with friends or with a partner or with family or children, like where we're just not making that time and we miss out.
How did you start to create that balance for yourself?
I think I started to create that by, just watching other people. I saw like lots of people who worked hard. I also really think about my parents. My parents were hardworking folks. They were both born and raised in Jamaica and came to the US. And I they didn't have a lot of resources, didn't have a lot of money, and had to work really hard. And didn't take a lot of vacations. And my mother, in particular, would talk about how she wanted to travel a lot. And this actually has shaped one of my signature talks that I give called I Give Myself Permission. And it's really one part of it focuses on we can learn really great things from our family, and in particular, our family of origin. And what I learned was hard work. I saw my parents, I saw my mom work hard. I saw them care for other people. But on the other side of that coin, I didn't necessarily see them take practice self-care, take real vacations. And so I think that was my first thing of saying I want to really work on that. And I think I got into traveling and really got the travel bug. And I love to travel, and people around me know that and know that I'm traveling multiple times a year. And over the years, I've also learned and had the ability to travel to work for work. So I can go speak in Miami. Love it. Call me all the time you want me to be there. I'll be there because I can go do the work and also spend some time with friends or family or other people. So I think early on, I realized what my parents did and saw their example and what they didn't do. Then I had examples of mentors and guides who were practicing. And then I loved traveling. And so that's how I take the break. Take the break and, first it was where can I get with small amounts of money? What flight can I find? What road trip can I get on? And I started to realize that that made me feel energized and fulfilled. And when I came back, I would always joke with my clients, if you want the amazing, best, like phenomenal, life changing therapy session, get me right after I come back from a vacation. Because by that point, I feel really refreshed and renewed, and everything is kind of flowing in the right way. And so I think that's how I started it. And then it just felt good. And I've just been doing it ever since.
Finding something that makes you feel really good is so important. But I love what you said about looking at your family of origin, your parents, and what examples they set, and the good ones, and the ones you're like, oh, I would like to change that for myself. I wrote a blog recently talking about my mindset and where it came from. And when I was younger, my dad used to stomp through the house with his boots on at 5 a.m. to wake us up. And it was very annoying. But I would get up at 5 a.m. and he would say, the early bird gets the worm. You have to get up before everyone else. Sleep when everyone else is sleeping? Kind of. But you need to be up before them and you need to be getting work done and taking advantage of the day. And I kind of lived by that for a while to the point where I was sleeping 2 to 3 hours and getting really tired and hitting things with my car or walking into walls and just not operating without having these breakdowns, these really tough days. And it took a while to see where that mindset came from. And I appreciate the hard work. He worked very hard so I could have so many opportunities. So I'm thankful for that. And I appreciate the fact that he gave me that desire to work hard and do multiple things. But it did really impact me until I learned that that hard work is so important and finding ways to also incorporate sleep or care or just changing my environment for a little bit during the day so that I can drive without hitting things. Really important.
Very important. And I love that. I love that, what I say to folks is that this is in no way to shine a negative light on my parents. They were amazing people and offered me great things that have impacted my life in significant ways. And if we hold honest reflection, there's also some things that I wish were different, just like my own children will say. And your ability to kind of talk about, your father and like recognize, like, hey, I tried to practice that, but the way I was practicing that wasn't really working best for me. So I have to either figure out a different way. I'm gonna work hard, obviously, right? Like, what am I? What is this? 177 or 176 episodes? That's hard work. I have my own podcast. Like, getting to 100 episodes is difficult, much less almost two. So, right, that says that you're able and willing to work hard. And maybe some of those things you learned from your dad or others around you and incorporated, but you had to find your own style, which is part of what I've had to do, right? Find my own way of taking the good and maybe reshaping the things that maybe aren't so good.
Yeah, and being able to set boundaries with that and enforce it for yourself has been big for me. I got in from a flight at like 3:21 a.m. and my dad calls me at 7:30. "Why are you still asleep?" Blowing up my phone, and I was like, "I slept 4 hours. Let me sleep."
Yeah.
He was like, "Why? Why do you need sleep? You're 25. You shouldn't need sleep." And right off the bat, I'm like, "Oh, I'm feeling guilty. I should be up and getting work done. I have so much advantage by being young and being able to get work done and have that extra energy that maybe you do need to sleep." I like tell myself I don't need to sleep, but I totally do. And it made me feel so guilty, and I wanted to get up and start my day on 4 hours of sleep, knowing that that's dangerous for my health and my physical safety with my track record. So, being able to set that boundary and say, "I'm not getting up at 7:30 and running to have breakfast with you. Love you so much. Let's connect in another point in the day."
I think it's important and holding boundaries with our parents, holding boundaries with our friends, our partner, our loved ones, it can be hard, right? Because I think a lot of times, not everybody, maybe for myself, right? We want people to be happy or pleased with us. And so sometimes we want to do the things that they want us to do. And holding a boundary feels like we're not doing what they want us to do. And we can feel shame, guilt, embarrassment for the things that are actually in our best interest. And so it's a really great thing when we're able to come to the place of saying, it's okay. It's okay for me to say no. It's okay for me to go back to sleep. It's okay to say, you know what, this is not bad that I am saying I need more than 4 hours of sleep. Right. And there have been places where learning my own boundaries with colleagues, with people I've worked with or worked for, with loved ones, and being able to just say, "Hey, this is what I feel I need." Now, I could be wrong. But at least I am putting the boundary out there and trying it and seeing if that's what's going to be effective for me. And then if I need to change, then I can do that.
Yeah. Oh, it's so important to kind of get rid of that guilt and shame and fear. Learning to say no was really hard. Learning to say no without defending myself and justifying it for an hour to someone else was very, very difficult. And learning that I can set a boundary and enforce it and realize this actually isn't the right boundary for me, for our relationship, and that's okay. And I can change it. It doesn't have to be, well, I worked so hard to enforce this, now I can never change it. Learning to adapt. I wish people talked about this like earlier in life. Learning to say no was so taught to like make everyone happy all the time, which is so great. I love making people happy, like you said, but I also love making myself happy too. And sometimes it's really nice when we all get to be happy because our relationship is so much better when I say no when I don't have the energy. Because if I went to that breakfast on 4 hours of sleep with my dad, anything he said would have been annoying to me.
Right.
I I would have had an attitude. He would have gotten upset, and it would have been so unproductive. So him being upset for like 5 minutes that I chose sleep over breakfast was definitely worth me getting that rest and us having a better time together later.
And that's the point where, especially in my talk where I'm encouraging people to say it's okay to give yourself permission to do that. Now, it doesn't mean to give yourself permission to do something that is harmful or hurtful or is going to put you in a bad place, but to be able to say, you know what, right now I'm wrestling with, do I say no to somebody I care about who wants something from me that, yes, in the realm of possibility, I could do, but might not really be best for me, for them, for the overall situation. And can I tell myself it's okay? Can I give myself permission in that moment to say it's o- it's okay to say no. It's okay to have this boundary and to be comfortable with that. And a lot of us need practice. All of us need practice in that. And when we do and we look back, it's like, wow, I'm so glad that I did that. And some boundaries could be, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to try this, or I'm going to, even in my work, sometimes it might mean I might not see another client, or I'm going to, for me, I was always a person that would often say yes to add in something to my plate. And I have a high tolerance of being able to do a lot of things and to do a lot of things at a pretty good level. And over time, I've had to learn and relearn and relearn the importance of being able to say, maybe not today, or maybe not now. Maybe I need to limit because that's just what's best for me. And maybe I don't help this person, or maybe I don't make the money that I wanted, but I'm in a better space for myself and those around me. And maybe that's what's best right now.
I love what you said, "No, not right now," too, because it doesn't have to be a permanent no. And I think that's something that people misunderstand with boundaries is that if I say no, it's no forever and I'm closing a door. And you can say no today. I really don't have the time, I don't have the energy, I don't have the mental capacity to take this on, but let's reconnect in the future. It doesn't have to be a no forever.
I think keeping that conversation alive is so important because we never know how things will change or how we will change. Uh, but yeah, sometimes it is needs to be, yeah, it's a no for today. It's a no for today because I had 4 hours of sleep. But tomorrow I might have a lot of sleep, right? I might be really ready and to go. Or, in my situation, like I said, there are times where I can hold that. And it's been just amazing for me to also recognize just even some of the natural rhythms of life where I would have said yes, but somehow it didn't work out. And when I look back, I would have been a complete mess, right? If I had said yes and it worked out. So sometimes I'm the one creating a boundary, and sometimes life or life situations or other people make the boundary for me. And I learn from that for the future to be able to say, you know what, maybe not now. Maybe this is not the best thing. And for me, that's been navigating a workload, or from what's important to me is balancing my work and my career and my ambition for that while also being present for my family, for my wife and my children, because it can be very easy to do one or the other, but I fully believe in both. And that's what I try to embody in my own life. And that's what I try to encourage the people I work with to do in their own way, but to know that it is possible.
Yeah, it's funny how life works out. One thing you said was that you have a high tolerance for being able to do so much and handle a lot of stress. And when you can do so much so well, it's sometimes really hard to identify that limit of I'm doing too much. How have you been able to identify that space of or that line of this is reasonable for me and my lifestyle and my family and what I want, and this is actually too much on my plate?
Yeah, that's an ongoing thing. I think what I've realized is when I get like internally frustrated or irritated. Like as a therapist, you see people and you work with people, and I tend to really like my clients and I like the people I work with. And I learned early one sign for me was when I started to feel like, oh my gosh, this person. When I start to have that feeling, that usually means like I need a break or something is going on. And in the work, there's a phrase of person of the therapist or self of the therapist, which is really about paying attention to yourself and what's going on for you. And so that would be one of those signs for me of just having some frustration or like, or, or wishing like, I hope they cancel, right? Having that feeling, I would know like, maybe I'm a little bit overwhelmed or maybe I'm a bit stressed. That would be one of those. I didn't realize it, but then I picked up on it that that would be one of those signs. And then, as I've moved forward in my life and now having a family, I realize that sometimes I can be driven and I can be like, okay, the next thing or the next mile or the next thing to accomplish. And it just seems like it's normal. It's the next thing to do. But when other people are involved, they can be overwhelmed from the first thing. And I think I started to pay attention to like, oh, what feels normal for me might not be normal for other people. And that sometimes has allowed me to say, does that mean maybe I passed? Is it that I've passed the line of what is kind of maybe okay in what I'm asking people? Or are they just their tolerance isn't up, so they aren't able to handle as much? But I've been able to at least ask myself that instead of just, no, we're going to keep moving and having people be miserable.
It's finding that line of what's feasible for all parties involved. And that's really hard when you're very ambitious and you're able to work really hard and to keep going. Because for you, it's normal and it's exciting. And then for someone else, this is a good example of me and my brother. I'm very much like a let's keep going person all the time. I'm always on, and he's, oh, I want to be generous. He's like 75% on.
I love it.
Trying to be
Yes.
nice, and 25% off. So if he's in college and he just started his first internship, he's adorable, and he's studying and he's trying to balance studying and work and school, and he'll call me and be like, "I just need a lunch date, like, meet me in Orlando." So we'll each drive, like, 3 hours to see each other. And for me, I'm like, "Okay, well, let's fix it right now. Let's see your schedule, let's see what we can fit in, and keep going." And he has to remind me, he's like, "I'm not you. I can't keep doing that." And he's like, "And you probably shouldn't either." So he calls me out on it, but
Which
he's
is good.
also like, "I'm not you, so I need to have these different expectations based on the person." He is never going to be, hopefully, because he does make that time for himself and to be a human. Hopefully, he never gets to that point where he's on 100% of the time. I love that he has that balance for himself, but to recognize we can both be different. I don't have to
Yeah.
push, and he doesn't have to push me.
No, I think that's beautiful. And once again, I think that comes from being open to connections and relationships that can happen in a sibling relationship, that can happen with coworkers, with friends, with family, with a partner. For me, it's been mainly my wife where she's helped me to just to reflect on, hey, to think about what I'm doing or to be aware of what I'm doing. She's very supportive of my ambition and my drive while also helping me to think about, at what cost at times. And there have been times where my ambition has cost me everything, right? Not what I mean by everything is the things that maybe I was working towards in that moment. So, an example, I remember years ago, I was, while in grad school, I was also pursuing being an actor. Once again, doing a lot of different things. And, but I enjoyed it. And I had this audition in New York about 2 hours away. And the same day, I had a speaking engagement. And so I believe, yes, of course, these things can happen. Let's keep going. And I went on the audition two, and I went to the second one. But here was my downfall. I'm also a talker. And at the second audition, I saw somebody I know. And then I started to talk with this person lost time, and I really should have probably either not gone to the second one or really made it in and out. Got on the road, hit a bunch of traffic, was super late to the speaking engagement. And my wife was really supportive and held me accountable of saying I really have to choose because that wasn't really representative of the way I want to show up. Because now I'm super late to the speaking engagement. That doesn't make me look like someone who's showing up and who's going to be competent and deliver. They're expecting somebody to be there. And that helped me to make some changes going forward of recognizing it can't always be everything always on all the time because you could end up losing it all. And so I love that your brother, kind of also kind of highlighted that. And that can, I believe that happens in relationship, that we can really sometimes recognize what we're doing. And sometimes it's a sibling, a friend, a family member, or a partner that can help us to recognize that.
How can people start opening that conversation? I know with my brother, him and I are just very like, "I'm not you," is our automatic response to each other. So for us, that's just like a natural dynamic fighting over who's our personalities. But I think it can be really difficult for people who love someone and care about someone and they want to offer some kind of like feedback or constructive criticism that allows them to bring more awareness to maybe decisions they're making that aren't super healthy for them
Yeah.
or that aren't long standing. So how would you what advice do you have for someone who wants to open that conversation with a loved one?
I think in any of those conversations, if we pursue it with thoughtfulness and kindness, it's more likely to work than to not. Right? It's hard for anybody to hear some critique or criticism or flaw. We can be highly defensive. We can we can deny it. We can do all those things. And sometimes it's major things that could be life threatening. Sometimes it's character things. Sometimes it's like annoyances or things that just bother other people. And I think just thinking through, like, okay, how do I want to say this? So oftentimes, even in my work, whether I'm working with a leader or athlete or entertainer or a client, I'm helping them to think through what is it that you're trying to say. I'm often then giving them the words of what could be said. Here's a way to say it that's vulnerable. Here's a way to say that's open. Here are some words, and people will say, "Oh, you know what? I didn't think about it that way, or I didn't have that way to put it together." And then I'll say to them, "All right, now put it in your own words, right? You don't have to use my words, but I wanted to give you a framework. I wanted to give you a way to kind of hear it and then that helps them to say, "Oh, okay, I just didn't think about it that way." So oftentimes we might need to kind of take a moment. Like sometimes people write that email or reply email and send it instead of write the email, then read it, then rewrite the email, get somebody else to look at the email, especially if it's an emotionally charged situation, because that first draft is usually trash. It's usually just not good. So I encourage people to have conversations with kindness and thoughtfulness. Know that the other person might not really be open to it, and practice a little bit before you start. Maybe think through what is it really that I'm trying to say. What are some ways that I can say it, and then go for it.
That is really great advice. And I think as the recipient, the same thing, right? Take a second, take a moment, try to understand what they're saying. I'm one of those people who gets super defensive at first, and I have to take a breather and think about what they said and what they meant because I might have heard one word and I activated it in my brain and completely turned it around. So being able to take a moment as well and say, this was coming out of a place of care and concern. Why are they concerned? And is this something that I understand is why they're concerned and something I can do about it and change? Or, you know what I'm doing right now is needed and important, and I'm not willing to make a change because either option can be right for you.
That is so once again, that's so important, right? A lot of I think what we've been talking about today is like being aware of ourselves. And that we're not perfect and that we might need to make some changes and adjustments, but it comes through that self-reflection. I think that is so important. I think what I learned along the way over these years is, what does it mean to be aware of, like, did I mean to say it that way? Or how did that come off? Or what am I feeling right now? Or it just all that self-reflection. When you talked about the self-care journal, it's a part of self-reflection. And in doing that, then we can say, you know what, I can be defensive when people say things because I've recognized this pattern in myself. So therefore, I'm going to take a moment to just take it in. But if we don't practice self-reflection, we just become defensive all over the place. So, I think it's just really important that we practice that so that we can become better.
Yeah, self-reflection is so important, that awareness. I had a class the other day and we had to practice reframing statements and how we would approach a topic with someone to be able to help a couple who needs to work on their dialogue. And my group is very logical and I'm very emotional. So I was like, right off the bat, use the word frustrated within the first 3 words. I was like, I tuned anything else after that out. You're frustrated with me. I did nothing wrong. I'm ready to go head to head with you. So having that awareness of what words maybe impact me and why I feel that way can make a big difference in my communication style with someone else and my communication style with myself, because I'm so quick to be like, I needed to get more work done. I'm frustrated with myself for not having the time to get it done. I'm frustrated with myself for feeling burnt out when all I needed was to take 20 minutes for self-care that day to not feel this way. So then
Mhm.
I'm beating down on myself and feeling terrible. So being able to recognize what's impacting me and what words are impacting me really makes a difference.
Yeah, no, that's so important. And similarly, I've found myself like, what are those triggers? What is impacting me? What throws me off? What makes me defensive? And the more that I'm able to do that, the better, right? And it's hard truths, right? It's hard to recognize, oh man, I am sensitive, right? And there's nothing necessarily wrong with being sensitive, but it's recognize when that sensitivity shows up and what you do with it. Oh, I am defensive. Oh, I do kind of come to conclusions, whatever, quickly, or whatever might be the situation. And in doing therapy, sometimes we are providing space, or I am providing space to help people come to those conclusions. It's a whole other thing when you have to recognize your own hard truths, right? It's easy with training, it can be easy to help people kind of have those aha moments, but it's not easy when you're experiencing the aha moments. So to be, I'm saying all that to say, be kind to yourself, right? Even in those defensive moments, I've had to be kind to myself in my defensive moments of recognizing, I know what these triggers are. I know that these are my routines. I know that I'm going to still feel it. It's not like it's going to stop. But now maybe I know a little bit more of what I can do to care for myself.
Being kind to yourself is so important. As we are wrapping up, someone's listening and they're like, you know what? I really want to start reflecting and finding space for self care and boundaries, but I really don't know where to start. What's a piece of advice you can give them?
I think that anyone who's able to say, here are some things I'm trying to work on, but I don't know where to start, is probably much further along than they realize. Right? That's in itself a moment of self-awareness. I realize I want to and need to adjust or change. And then being able to say, like, are there people who you think do that really well? Friends, family, loved ones, people in the public. Are there podcasts I can listen to? Are there books I can read? Am I willing to see a therapist? Maybe that becomes your moment to say, you know what? Maybe it's probably a good time for me to go to therapy or go back to therapy. In addition, I think for many of us, it is being able to realize that it is not a flip of the switch change, it is over time. And so, over time, how can I be more reflective? How can I hold more boundaries? How can I practice more self-care? It comes with practice. I remember in moments in my life of just saying, all right, I'm just going to try this. I don't know what's going to happen on the other side, but I'm going to try it. And I had to gear myself up. I had to get the energy. I had to believe in myself. I had to kind of pump myself up and hype myself up to try whatever it might be, to try the boundary, to say no. And I remember like holding a boundary with a friend who I felt like was often asking me for support, but when I needed it, wasn't there. And I held the boundary. And the friend got really upset, and that changed the nature of our relationship, but I still held the boundary. And so it doesn't mean the outcome is always going to be great, but I had to work myself up to hold that boundary. And it was what I needed to do because that became evidence that I can do it. And then I was able to do it again. So sometimes we just have to gear ourselves up, get our motivation and energy up, and just try it. And then try it again and practice, get some help and support, read, listen, show up, and then before you know it, you realize you're on the journey.
Thank you so much for listening to Normalize the Conversation. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. This podcast is an initiative of Inspiring My Generation, focusing on normalizing the conversation, bringing education and awareness to the forefront, and amplifying global voices to spark change and hope. Inspiring My Generation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization on a mission towards suicide prevention through awareness, conversation, education, and support. Connect with us on Instagram at Inspiring My Generation and visit our website inspiringmygeneration.org to learn more about our work and how you can make a difference.